Give everybody some time to check in, man. Check in, check in. It's been a while. But we got an exciting show today. This is probably the most timely show. This is the show that's needed right now in this moment. So we excited, man. It's a big night tonight. We really excited. Big night. Go ahead and share. Share your screen, do your watch parties. If you do a watch party, do recognize that your comments will not be seen in the broadcast studio. So I will not be able to respond if you're in somebody else's watch party. But if you want your comments to be heard, if you want your comments heard, please comment here from the live at Aspirational Insights on Facebook. And of course, you can check in on YouTube, Good Trouble Equity Talks. Man, we're excited tonight. We got Dr. Bedell. He already in the background. He already in the broadcast studio waiting to come on live. Been chopping it up with him. I used to get to see my friend every week when I was in that superintendent role with him. I don't get to see him as much now. So it was good catching up with him backstage, man. But we're ready. We get ready to go. We're going to give people some time to get checked in, giving people time to get checked in. 1 minute away from the 7 o'clock hour Central Time. I know I got a lot of friends tuning in on the West Coast. So, of course, you're a lot earlier. You're around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we got my friends on the East Coast. It's 8 o'clock p.m. But we're here, man. We are here. Good Trouble Equity Talks. Please share. This is going to be a big show, as all of us have on our minds. What's going on with school? What's going on with school? We're going to talk about all of that, man, as we move into the fall. So give everybody time to get checked in. We're live. We're here. We're excited. It's a big night for Good Trouble Equity Talks. Big night. I see we got people checking in already. Thank you. Share. Big show. We got Dr. Bedell. He's in the broadcast studio waiting to come on live. And we're going to cover some big topics. 1 hour, man. I don't know if we need to go 2 hours tonight with the doc, but we got 1 hour. And we got the time that's needed to delve into some key topics. It is 7 o'clock. I want to welcome everyone to the Good Trouble Equity Talk podcast. I got my friend, I got my brother with me tonight, Dr. Mark Bedell. Dr. Bedell and I have been in the trenches together for several years, and he's still in those trenches in the Kansas City, Missouri School District, KCPS, doing a phenomenal job in a challenging situation. We're going to hear from him tonight. We're going to delve into multiple topics. First topic we're going to delve into is COVID-19 and reopening plans. Everyone's thinking about reopening from their perspective, whether it be young children thinking about reopening from a student perspective, whether it be teachers, whether it be parents, and also school district staff. So I do not envy the position that my brother is in, and all superintendents, my former colleagues, are in relative to thinking about this whole notion of reopening. It would also be disingenuous if we didn't delve deep into the conversation as it relates to the most recent violence in our community and the violence that has landed upon young people right here in KCMO. And Dr. Bedell has had an opinion on that for a while. I've dealt with some of that too during my time in the Hickman Mills School District and even in the Lee Summit School District. So we're going to talk about violence in our community and the impact on our young people. And the Black Lives Matter protests, man, that's been a big part of this spring and summer too, as we start thinking about a new year. So when you think about the Black Lives Matter protests, students finding their voice. And now that students have found their voice, they're not going to lose that voice again. So it's going to be very interesting hearing from Superintendent Bedell and what he thinks about student voice as it relates to Black Lives Matter movement and the things that have been accomplished thus far. So we want to thank you all for being here. Good Trouble Equity Talks. And we're not going to let him leave. We're not going to let him leave without talking about the letter. We're going to talk about the letter. The letter that came forward, man, and it was timely and it was necessary. I'm thinking about my time when Cerner came in and just ravaged the Hickman Mills School District community. And I was told when I got there, brand new to the state, Dr. Carpenter, this train has left the station. Well, it may have left the station, but it left the station on the backs of young people and families. because Cerner had an opportunity to reimagine that entire community, and they failed that community. They continue to fail that community, and they failed that school district. So thanking Dr. Bedell for his courage, man, and the Blue Scope piece, and we're going to definitely talk about that. Without further ado, man, we got 22 people on my screen. Share, share, share. We got people going live. They're checking in, so please check in, share your screen, do watch parties. If you want your comments considered, please place them right here in the link. Kelly Wachel, we're here. I see you checking in. Two of your favorite people. Without further ado, here is Superintendent Dr. Mark Bedell. Let's go.
Good evening, and thank you,
Doctor, how's it going?
Doing good, sir. I am just busy like everybody else that's out here trying to figure out how do we navigate in uncharted territories such as these.
Absolutely, man. There's so many topics we want to engage in with you this evening, and we want to thank you for giving us the time, because I know the superintendency is always 24/7, but I know it's hopping now as it relates to preparing and gearing up for the start of the new year. How are you doing?
Man, it's an interesting time to be a superintendent in this country. We have a lot going on. 2020 has been just a different year on so many fronts. It's difficult nights to sleep. I'm out here trying to figure out, how do we not lose kids? How do we not have students fall further behind? What is it that we need to do to make sure that the faculty and staff is protected through all of this? And then also taking into account the wants and needs of the community. So you are juggling so many different variables here as you try to make the right decisions, and hope that when it's all said and done, that you are on the right side of history and in the decisions that we're making.
Wow. So let's just get into it, man. We're going to start off with COVID-19 and reopening plans. I'm a parent in KC Mo. What's going on in August? What's going to happen? What's going to happen in KC Mo? I'm a parent. I need to know.
So at this point, the district has submitted surveys and gotten a tremendous amount of feedback from our community on 3 options. It's the same options that everybody's looking at around the country. The first choice is you want to be in a situation where if you can have all of your students in school, you want that. That's the ideal scenario, but probably not the most practical at this point. So then the second option is 100% virtual. And then there's a hybrid model that we're looking at. And as I look at the statistics right now, and I look at the feedback that we receive from the surveys, it's looking more and more like a hybrid model where we want to be able to give our parents options. If they feel comfortable and they want their students in person, we want to be able to offer that. And then we know that there will be a number of parents who will say, I prefer to have my kid on a virtual platform. So the district has worked hard to build that out. And if you go to our website, KCPS, www.kcpublicschools.org, as it's scrolling down here, you could take a look at our curriculum, the learning modules that we've been able to develop over the past several months. We feel very good about what we've been able to do. But Dr. Carpenter, I've shared this with many superintendents. There is no perfect solution.
Wow. There
is no perfect solution in this scenario. So when we do make our announcement, and our target date is probably somewhere around the 15th of July, saying to our families, here's what the school district's looking to do. And some of that may be subjected to some change, just depending on what the trends look like. But we wanted to try to get as far as we could into the month of July, but give our parents still about a month, a little bit over a month, to be able to pivot and make whatever decisions they need to make. And we think mid-July, making that announcement still gives us a month and a full week before we actually start school.
Okay, what did you learn? What did you learn from virtual learning last spring? I mean, what did you see last spring, and what worked, what didn't work? Talk to me about last spring.
Now, I learned that the inequities that exist in this district and in this city surfaced. And when you are in a school district like ours, where you have 40 to 42% mobility, you have Wi-Fi deserts in the city, which is something that I am working alongside a number of community leaders right now, Wayne Grant and a number of other community leaders, to try to address that through a federal task force to address the Wi-Fi inequities, not only in our boundaries, but even as you think about the rural school districts where they don't have towers. Inequities out there exist. And so we're trying to address both of that. Sorry, got a little bug flying in here. But for us, that automatically put us behind the 8 ball, because when this occurred during that last week in March, we did not have enough devices to go home across the board. We had Apple iPads for our students in K through 2, but we didn't have, and we didn't have the protective cases because they were class sets. So those aren't devices that we can allow to go out. So that automatically put us behind the 8 ball. Our high schoolers already had laptops, so they were able to take theirs home, and they were already familiar with the virtual platform. And then we had to then do distribution to students in grades 3 through 8. So we had to start off with work packets. A number of districts were in that situation until they were able to get some additional laptops in. And for us, we were waiting on devices, but also Wi-Fi hotspots. Yes. Because we didn't have, a lot of our families didn't have any type of connectivity, so they couldn't even access the virtual curriculum that we had online.
Wow. So I'm a teacher. Let's talk about our teachers, man. You know, we need students and we need teachers to make this thing called learning occur. I'm a teacher. Don't feel comfortable coming back. Maybe I have underlying health conditions. Maybe I'm just nervous and afraid. What does KCMO say to the teacher that's not ready in August to come back?
Well, the district right now is working through our human resources department on a form that we've already worked on creating that will allow for us to sit down and take every individual case by case in order to make sure that we are doing right by our employees. If you don't have a healthy workforce, then the social, emotional, and academic development that we need out of our students simply will not happen. And so, as I said to you pre-show, with our school district, we look at it as almost a 1A and a 1B, or you can say 1A, 1A, which is we want to make sure that we're making the best decisions that will absolutely help develop and propel our students on those 3 fronts of emotional, social, and academic performance and growth. But we also want to make sure that the health of our faculty and staff is also taken into account on that line. And so it is going to be a situation where it is going to be situation by situation. And we want to make sure that our faculty and staff will get the support that they need, and to make sure that there will be some who will opt to go on the virtual platform. As we know, we will have a number of students and parents who will choose the virtual platform. But we also know in our surveys that there are a number of teachers that are interested in coming back. They want to come back. They want the contact with our students. And as a school district, I don't want our parents, especially for those kids in elementary school, to have to try to figure out how to educate those kids, because honestly, they're learning to read in those early years. And that there's a level of expertise that teachers have through their certifications that our kids need exposure to. The typical average parent isn't trained to be a reading teacher, right? They don't understand structural analysis and all of the letter sounds, phonemes, phonics, all of those different pieces that you need, balanced literacy, what that looks like, they don't know. And so to expect them to then turn around and overnight become great at home educators on top of having to deal with their work, that's just not, it's not a realistic and it's not a fair proposition to put our parents in. And so if anything, my suggestion will always be, you need these elementary kids in. It's a little bit more flexible as they get older, because at that phase, a lot of them are learning to read. I mean, they're reading to learn at that point, because they've developed those foundational structural tenets that they need in order to be competent and to be able to be self-independent a little bit more.
Absolutely, man. So I can tell you, man, as a superintendent, I never shied away from a tough decision, but I do not envy the position that you all are in, man. I just want to say thank you for doing this work because it's needed, man. It's like super, super needed right now. So let's think about this from an equity lens. In terms of students, man, the students who need it the most, and you just talked about some of that, whether it be developmentally on the continuum as kids are learning to read, but also kids that need the most support in school. Did you see them really logging in last spring? And what do you think about that for the coming year? I mean, did you lose any kids last spring?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we probably made contact with well over 90% of them through our student support division. We found some students who were in Texas. Students had left. We had some students who went back to their home countries. And so, yeah, we absolutely lost contact. And the thing I always pride myself in is being very transparent and very honest. I don't try to speak and say what I think people want to hear and then walk out feeling like, hey, I got this all under control. We didn't have it under control. That's just real talk. We probably had about a 55% contact rate, very similar to what you saw in a lot of urban school districts over time. And that means that instead of looking at some of your students that may be classified as tier 3 students, you now have students that are classified as tier 4. So what does that mean for our school district? And honestly, I wanted to go bold immediately, but realizing that because of the unknown with this virus and how things continuously change, to do the kind of change that I want to see happen in this school district, this is not the time to do it. We already in right now a level of discomfort because we just don't know what we don't know. But what I want to do is to make sure that people understand we're going to engage this community on what does a redesign of schooling look like in the Kansas City Public School District this fall. I'm going to present to this community some out-of-the-box thinking calendar options that are already done. I just need the community to say we're on board. And an example of that, Dr. Carpenter, would be a 60-40, a 60-20 type calendar where it's almost like a trimester calendar where the kids would be they may be in school from August until November. And then you get the month of November off, but there's a number of kids that we know are tier 3, tier 4 that need support. So you do an intercession. So now you freed up additional time to give these students some of the interventions and support. And then you come back and you go from December all the way through March, and then you have intercession 2. And in intercession 2, you get to bring the students in, you get to work with them. It's all targeted. It's based on data. It's based on their iReady performance. So you get beginning of year, mid-year, and then you come again at the end of the year when you do like your normal summer school. So you would basically, in essence, add a significant amount of weeks of interventions and support. And what I've been pushing people on is if the system has not worked at the level that we think it should be working at for 70 to 75% of the students, why do you continue to operate in that manner if the system isn't getting the kind of results that this community and that I believe these students deserve? This is an opportunity for us to really take a deep look at how do we redesign, and we will be doing a lot of engagement, and we will be ready to make some decisions and recommendations to our board, hopefully in early January, around what does this look like moving forward.
Well, that's super exciting, Dr. Bedell, to hear. You know, that's in essence some form of a year-round calendar with intercessions built in for kids who need interventions the most, man. So oftentimes out of crises, we find ourselves being more innovative. Thank you for being innovative in that space, man. We're going to kick it to another topic, man. That was a big topic, and we could keep going. Got a lot of feedback coming in. We're going to hear from our audience. But this is the Good Trouble Equity Talk. I am Dr. Dennis Carpenter, your host, and we're excited to have Dr. Bedell here from the Kansas City Public School System. You see the website scrolling on the bottom of the screen. Check them out. See what they're doing some good work for the children of Kansas City. We're going to hit a more somber note, man. This past week brought back memories for me. I went back to October 17th, 2014. October 17th, 2014, I was driving home one afternoon and somebody said, Dr. Carpenter, you have to turn around. We just had a 6-year-old shot and killed with an assault rifle right on Blue Ridge, right up from your office. One of our girls, Angel Hooper. I'll never forget Angel Hooper. And I literally turned around that afternoon. I parked across the street from the crime scene, and I didn't leave there until about 2:00 a.m. And I watched every move on that crime scene with my board president at that time, Mr. Sean Kirkwood. We sat there and we took that in, and I approached the podium that Sunday, and I called whoever these young bucks were, I called them cowards. Because if you're really involved in a beef with somebody and you're not being a coward, you would take it there with them face to face. But instead, you choose to just fire a weapon that can kill and hurt innocent bystanders. And so now here we are again, right back in that same space as a community. Teenager, young child. And I recall you speaking up on this too, Dr. Bedell, a few years back. What's on your mind as it relates to the violence that's just wreaking this community and destroying our young people, man? Talk about it.
I held on to this article because I remember this was 2 years ago. And at that time, I had only been in the assignment for 2 years. And I was very frustrated with the amount of violence. And this is an article by the Kansas City Star written on October 15th, 2018. And the article talked about a number of students that have been murdered since I've been here, the number of students that in our school district had either been victims of a shooting. And for me, the issue was there wasn't enough talk from our leaders in the city. So that article put it out there that all lives matter, right? Black lives matter, Latino lives matter. A lot of these kids that are getting killed all happen to be, most of them, East of Troost. And I remember thinking about how the city had handled some of the other murders. And this was probably a year later or so, when you had the 25-year-old white female that was murdered, and then all of a sudden there's a press conference. Mm-hmm. And I said, and on that first Friday, and I brought it up, there's been about 70-something other people that have been murdered, and there's been no press conference regarding those folks. And it just once again highlights who's important and who's not. And for me, being in the position that I'm in, Dr. Carpenter, I can't sit here and continue to be silent, and I'm not silent. I've never been a silent person.
No.
But I have to leverage this opportunity that I have with the influence that I have in this city to bring issues to the forefront, to say enough is enough. And we have to do more. We have to do a better job. And when I always share with people, I had to understand this. Why are things the way that they are here in Kansas City? And there's a video, and maybe Kelly, I know you may be on. Kelly can send this information to our listeners. There's a video called Structural Racism in Kansas City. It's a 13-minute, 8-second video on YouTube. It was done probably about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. Look at it. Look at it. It tells you the story of two cities. There's a book called A City Divided, right? So it talks about the division in this city and what exists. There's a book called Racism in Kansas City, A Short History by G.F. Griffin. Complex Justice, which is all on the school district, by Joshua Dunn, and what happened with the whole $2 billion judgment that the district got, and how the district actually, when it was all said and done, came out worse because there wasn't a lot of input from people within the system. Everything was court ordered, but then the district takes a bad look from everybody around the state because that $2 billion came from everybody else around the state. So the district with some money, the money that they couldn't even control, right? It's just a dark history. And then you have the Kansas City experience, 1900. I'm sorry, race, real estate, and uneven development. Kansas City experience, and we'll talk about that whole stuff later with the letter around economic development and what's happening. But after reading this stuff, you have a better understanding of why things are the way that they are and who's valued and who's not. And a lot of it is rooted in structural racism. And people get mad when I say that, but I've been saying it since I got here in 2016. I have said this. I'm more conscious of the fact that I'm a Black man living here than any other city I've lived in.
Wow. Me too. And Doc, I got here in 2013. So I got here a little bit ahead of you, man. And when I came, Cerner was just literally, you talk about the highest degree of corporate welfare that anyone has ever seen. When you talk about the abatements that were given to Cerner in a small school district like Hickman Mills, Cerner could have taken a drop in the bucket and reimagined that entire, not only school district, but that entire quadrant of our community. But they chose to be more loyal to their shareholders. They chose that over being good corporate community citizens. And that has been a norm here. And it is deeply rooted in structural racism. So I've been saying that for a while. And ultimately, and I tell people all the time, and structural racism is not just a white thing.
No, it's not. I agree with you.
Many times, Black folks are in positions of influence and they're holding up these structures.
So to your point, we talk a lot about not being a perpetuator of those practices. And it's something that I have to be very conscious of and aware of it, as I think about our equity policy and I think about the equity work that we're doing. Are we adhering to what we said we were going to do to make sure that we level the playing field across the board? And for us, that's also about making sure that we feed back into this community in an equitable manner, right? When you think about MBE, WBE, one of our biggest contracts we just gave out to an MBE person, MBE business owner, was over $3.5 million or somewhere in that range for laptops. Gentleman out of St. Louis. And we want to make sure that we're doing our part to feed back into the community that feeds into us. And I think that's important. But we also want to make sure that when we do feed into our community, right, the expectations are the same for everybody.
Absolutely.
The product needs to be able to help our students get on that continuum of constant social, emotional, and academic growth. It's just that simple. Mm-hmm. And so I understand, and we're not even on that topic yet. That is a hot topic right now in this city. So I'm looking forward to that. But I did want to go back.
Let's go. We're here right now because I brought up Cerner, and now you're talking about the letter because that is a hot topic right now for the benefit of our viewing audience. Unless you've been under a rock in Kansas City, Dr. Bedell put forth a very, very clear and direct letter to our city council. This letter was much needed. It was timely. I can recall a letter that Mr. Lowe and myself penned, but coming from a Hickman Mills versus coming from a KCMO, it's a different type of a letter. And this letter has penetrated this community in a way. I don't know what the vote would have been before the letter. Far be it for me to say that it would have passed without the letter. All I know is that I think it was a 9-4 vote, and we voted down continuing abatements for Blue Scope. So Dr. Bedell, talk about that letter. What went through your mind and said, I got to pen this letter right now? Talk to me about it.
I feel that the school district has tried everything in our power to work with the city. I have personally, in my opinion, I feel like I have a great relationship with the current mayor, and I had a great relationship with the former mayor. But the economic development piece is something that I have pushed both mayors on to make sure that we take a deeper look at how the practices are impacting this community as a whole and not just certain areas. Because my concern has been, I've never opposed economic development. I think it's a good tool if it's used in a fair and balanced and equitable way. But when most of the projects are taking place in the downtown area or the plaza or Broadway area, which is west of Truce, then we're not doing enough in the communities that have intentionally been shut out, the communities that have been redlined, right? As you think about that race, real estate and development in Kansas City, it talks about the different types of redlining and yellow lining and green lining and all of those things. So when you don't have any type of economic development happening within your community, the communities can't ever rise. You don't have grocery stores. You have food deserts. So not only are we dealing with Wi-Fi deserts, which was truly exposed with COVID-19, we've been dealing with food deserts. Fortunately, we were able to get the sun fresh over there at Prospect and Linwood, or Prospect and Linwood and 31st, somewhere in that range, but in that area. But what did it for me with this project was that here's a company that's already had abatements for 20 years. 20 years. They turn around and say, well, if you don't give me another 15 years of abatements, I'm leaving. We're going over to Kansas. And at that point, I'm not interested in negotiating with anybody, because we've been negotiating, and there are some projects where I don't think the district's brought to the table in advance. And that's all I've been asking is, can we be at the table before votes are even counted, so that we can at least give some input? And that way, by the time you get to the end of the process, we could be in a better situation where it is in a collaborative manner. And here, even if the vote turns out that it wasn't in our favor, at least we had an opportunity to oppose it and to try to help shape it, because those things can still happen. If it's a project and it's something that the city council feels is important, it's going to get through. But at least give us an opportunity. We're not at the table. It keeps happening over and over and over. So the straw that broke the camel's back was this situation with Blue Scope. And at that point, I just had to call it out the way that I believe this is a perpetuation of structural racism, because these are the practices that continuously suck resources out of our community, even after you've already got the full benefit of it and you're well off. If we can continue to get away with it, we will, on the backs of the community. And we 100% free and reduced lunch school district. So I just got to a point where I'm saying, look, enough is enough. We're doing everything. We feed families. We provide Wi-Fi hotspots. We're doing everything to provide the mental health supports. School districts it's like we're required to be everything for everybody. And then we constantly then have people sucking resources away. And I didn't appreciate it, Dr. Carpenter. I just didn't appreciate it.
Well, they have this terminology they use for the benefit of our viewing audience. They want to term a place blighted, and they use what they call a but-for test. But for this development, and this development getting this incentive, the project couldn't take off and go. But we know that quadrant of our community has already taken off. So at this point, I'm going to call a spade, and I'm just going to simply say at this point, it becomes corporate welfare. So it's not but for this project, it's but for my desire to deplete resources from a Black community. That's the but for test. And that needs to be dealt with. I'm glad you wrote the letter, and I was glad to see City Council line up behind this in a way that should set a precedence going forward. Enough is enough.
And to your point, Dr. Carpenter, my letter basically was built on work that everybody in this city been trying to do for years. And I think they just kept punching the wall. They kept hitting that wall. And I feel like they cracked it good enough that then by the time this letter came out, people felt that their hard work paid off. So you have groups out here, and I have to give them credit, because I think because of the position I'm in, of course, it's going to take the media attention that some of these people, average people in this community, have been fighting. More Square has been phenomenal in this fight. NAACP, they've been phenomenal. Urban League, These are people who have been calling for reform around real estate and development practices in our city. They've been in this fight far longer than I've been in administration. And oftentimes it falls on deaf ears, right? And so to me, this is more of credit to them because of the work that they've been doing over the years to get us to this point. And what we can't let off the hook, Carpenter, and I just have to put it out there. And
let's do it. That's why we're here.
I don't know if it was you or somebody told me when that letter went out. Well, I knew when the letter went out. Be prepared. You're gonna have some enemies as a result, which isn't the intent of it. I'm going to fight and advocate for this school district as I made a promise in June of 2006, January of 2016 at the sale. But the economic development attorneys don't get a pass in this, because those are the folks that advise these developers. We're going to work to make sure that you get these incentives. And then the way it tends to play out in media is Mark Bedell out here calling out city council members, and then people feeling like I'm targeting and calling them a racist. Some of these people I don't even know, right? The letter had nothing to do with being a racist. The letter had everything to do with the way that the system continuously plays out and the perpetuation of those practices that are structural racist tenets that are designed to continue to keep districts like our school district on their knees. And
well, so, you're right about that. And you know, what I've learned is that when you attempt to have conversations about institutional or structural racism, there's always a person in the majority culture, a white person, that wants to turn that into a conversation about you're calling me a racist. And I think that they're smart enough to know the difference. But I think that terminology is used to shut down conversations and maintain a status quo. So thank you for pushing through that, because that's what we have to do as courageous leaders. We have to push through. Oh, I won't be called a racist again. Yeah, I saw that foolishness. Nobody called you a racist.
Right.
You talked about systems and structures that are systemically racist, that have disparate impacts on certain communities. And if you want to try and shut down the communication by saying someone called you a racist, go for it. But I'm glad to see you press through it and push through it. Now, the second thing I'll say related to that is, as communities, we have work to do. Because it's not just enough to say, oh, Dr. Bedell, he told them what needed to be said in that community. Dr. Bedell got him in that letter to the community, to the city council. No, Dr. Bedell didn't get anybody. He made a statement that's needed in terms of the children in his district. So now the next thing that's needed, and I'll speak for you, now you need a community that knows how to sustain and embed and entrench courageous leaders in their work and in that space.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's the piece. I've heard a couple of community members say that it definitely shouldn't be about a superintendent. I've even had some teachers say that, like, superintendents come and go, as you know. And ultimately, what I'm hoping my impact will be on this community is that I did enough to help empower people, especially our youngsters, that it's okay to go out and speak their minds and to be truthful about where they are. My daughter was out protesting. She went out. We were worried as parents, but we wanted her to understand that this is how you get out if you really want to have change. But the hard work, as you said, Dr. Carpenter, takes place after the aftermath of everything being highlighted on TV. So now it's the work of saying, how do we really push policy in a way that will allow for us to address the disparities in economic development west of Truce and east of Truce? And if you want incentives, because the school district will work with you. You talking about doing projects east of Truce, we work with you if it's a worthy project west of Truce. We have countless examples of that. But this is what we want to see, revitalization, so that Kansas City can be a great city for everybody and not just a select few.
And this is why we say Black Lives Matter. For those of you who do not know, this is the Good Trouble Equity Talk. I am with Superintendent Dr. Mark Bedell. This is why we say Black Lives Matter, because there are policies and practices all around us that suggest which lives matter and which lives do not. We talked about a press conference being held by city leadership. White female is killed first Friday. Meanwhile, there are countless murders in the Black community. No press conference. Folks, that's systemic. It's not by chance. So that's why we had our young people in the streets being pepper sprayed. We got calls now for the police chief to do better or pack his stuff and be gone. And I'm not going to put you into that conversation, but we want to talk about Black Lives Matter in the protests. Because what I saw emerging, Dr. Bedell, and I was out. I didn't see Jaden that day. I heard she was out there. I was looking for her, but I didn't see her.
Yeah, I think y'all missed each other.
Yeah, but what I learned out there is that our young people have found a voice around advocacy. And I've been putting together some pieces, doing a little research and be a part of my professional development portfolio here going into the new year. But I think we grew up and our parents were in this age, and I'll just call it on this continuum that got us to where we are now. Our parents were in this space where after the civil rights movement, we just got into this phase of accepting. You know, your parents probably said the same things to you that I heard. You got to work twice as hard for half as much. Mm-hmm. Just keep working hard. Don't give them anything to get you on. And all those types of things, just accepting all of this structural racism, and then you just work harder, just have more grit, if you will. My parents didn't use the word grit, but that was the mentality. Just work harder, put your head down, ignore it, keep going, acceptance. Then as I started through my career, I found myself early in my career accepting some things. Didn't think they were quite right, but I just said, well, I'm new in this space, so maybe I'm just accepting. But at some point I made a turn and I went from accepting to asking, just some questions. And what I found just in asking is that it makes those in positions of power uncomfortable just to hear the question. Yeah. Because they believe that they should dominate and run a system. So when you pose a question, they get uncomfortable. And that discomfort, as Robin DiAngelo has told us, they will get rid of whatever it is causing the discomfort. If you cause enough and you do enough asking, they will find a way to get back on their racial equilibrium. But now we're at another phase. We have a group of young people now that are demanding. So we've gone from accepting to asking to now demanding. And what we're finding, Dr. Bedell, and you'll see some of this, and I'm sure you can attest to it, some of this demanding is leading to some results, the likes of which we have not been able to get. This demanding, whether we agree or disagree, it has statues being toppled in major cities across this country. This demanding has led to the banning of chokeholds in one of our nation's largest police departments. This demanding has Colorado getting rid of qualified immunity. So these young people are learning that demanding is working. You're getting ready, whether it be virtual, blended, or face-to-face, you're getting ready to bring children back to school in the Kansas City public school system who've seen the power of their voice as it relates to protest and advocacy. Is the system ready for that?
Well, we've been ready for it because I spend a lot of time with our students. I talk to our students about the importance of voicing their concerns. If you listen to my speech, which will be posted sometime towards the end of this month for our commencements, my speech talks about demanding that our students hold all of these leaders accountable, including me.
Absolutely.
Including me, right? I don't get a pass. So when we made the decision that we were not going to have in-person commencement at UMKC, and we had to break it into smaller groups, a lot of our seniors didn't understand what that meant. And so they were ready to protest. And I remember folks telling me, there's a group of seniors that might protest in front of the building on the board meeting night. And I said, I'll welcome that. I mean, we're virtual, but I'll welcome that. I want our kids to be able to express themselves, because that's what we're trying to do, teach them how to self-advocate and to ultimately allow for us to have some change, some systemic change that is needed. And this young generation, in my speech to them, what I said to them, and I'm just say it real quick, Dr. Carpenter, things happen for a reason. I don't know why this virus hit us when it did. All I can do is apologize to you that you didn't get to have your senior prom, that you didn't get to do your senior activities during the month of May, and that you did not have an opportunity to walk across that stage at UMKC with all of your peers. But what I can tell you is this is preparing you for an even larger battle, a bigger battle that's going to reap bigger rewards. And it's going to be your generation that is going to lead us through breaking down the tenets of structural racism, the gender inequities that exist in this country, the socioeconomic status inequities that exist in this country. You all are going to lead us, and we hope that we've done our job to prepare you because we're ready to follow. That's what this movement has done, in my opinion, for the next evolution of this country. And to your point, you're absolutely right. Things are being done. I'm very proud of our board because we did adopt that equity policy. Our first board monitoring update that's going to take place in August is going to be on our equity plan, right? I created a position around an assistant superintendent over equity and innovation. And the next phase for us as a school district is, okay, it's good to have equity policy 0.0, but if you didn't unpack the existing policies that are written in an oppressive nature, you just doing stuff for the highlight of it. And I can tell you our board is ready to move on with that next phase now of starting to unpack policies. Some of them may have to be just completely, we get rid of it. We may have to do some revisions, and there may be some where we have to write brand new policy to align to where we want to see this school district head as we talk about this redesign.
Well, and that's critical, man. So I'm glad to see that you're getting the board support that's necessary to do this difficult work, man. I saw your board president, Miss Patty, on there. Hey, Patty, thank you for checking in. But what I will say is, man, it's so needed. Governance has to support this work if they're serious. And superintendents have to be able to recognize when boards aren't serious.
Well, but it goes back to what you said. And honestly, this is important for our listeners, especially people who are aspiring to become superintendents. Don't get in the job just because you want to be able to say, I'm the head honcho in charge. I'm the head man in charge. I get this exposure to, all of the finer things. I get a nice paycheck. That's a disservice. And oftentimes we have a little bit too much of that happening in different areas. You have a lot of great leaders out here, but the truth is, Dr. Carpenter, you got to be willing to be a martyr to do this work. It's that simple. And we know what you went through out there trying to do what has now come to the surface. I've been very pleased and I've been very fortunate that they have said, okay, we're going to craft an equity policy. We're going to approve spending into the reserves to make sure that you're a tiered model of supports. So the schools that have the higher socioeconomic status and the lowest performance get additional resources. That's and what people don't get to hear is, here's how it's played out. We're no longer in the bottom of the state of Missouri in performance anymore.
Speak on it.
2 consecutive years in a row under a much harder test. We've closed gaps against the state in math and reading. We've actually, on that report card, got exceeding expectations. We've exceeded the growth targets that the state put in place. Science, we had big gap closures. We're going to have some of our highest graduation rates since we started tracking graduation rates in this school district. For the first time since I've been here in 4 years, attendance rates are going up because of systems that we put in place. So these resources have made a difference. And if you don't have a supportive board in trying to do this kind of work, and if they don't give you time, because part of the issue is urban superintendents don't last long because there's a couple of things. If you get in here and you just happy and you satisfied that you made it, you do a disservice to all of these kids that you're supposed to be helping to lift up. So you got to be willing to say it's not enough to just collect a $260,000 check a year and think that you're doing your job and then you're not necessarily moving the needle because you'll be out. Right. And ultimately, but then on top of that, being able to say, OK, I've developed some level of political capital, community capital. How do I leverage that now to bring more issues to the forefront? because I couldn't do some of the stuff that I'm doing now 4 years ago when I first started.
Absolutely.
I didn't have any results. But you also have to have a board that's going to give you time. And that's what we often don't get in these districts. You don't get time to let your systems work. So now they're starting to work. And then you get these interruptions that slow us up. We hit 2 out of the 3 years. We hit 70% or better, but the state says you got to do it 2 consecutive years. We lost out on accreditation because of attendance last year. Otherwise, we would have hit 2 years in a row of 70. This is stuff the community don't know, but our equity work that we're doing is paying dividends right now.
And that attendance formula, I'm just going to speak on this. So if anybody from DESA is on here, they need to wake up. Marjorie Van Dieven, get over that foolishness. Get over that foolishness talking about attendance. Here's what we know. We're still calculating seat time as a piece of the accreditation process. Where's seat time for anybody right now with COVID? Schools are transitioning. It's about competency now. And that's what the future is going to be about, competency. So if you're enhancing and improving competency, get that doggone 10 points for attendance out of here and give KCMO, Kansas City Public Schools, their damn accreditation.
Yeah, we would have hit over 70 2 years in a row. But so yeah, Dr. Carpenter. Yeah, and I see Anthony Lewis is here. Anthony Lewis, hello, sir. Anthony worked with KCPS. He's been here for a number of years, and he's the first African-American superintendent out in Lawrence.
Absolutely.
We love him out there. He is in the community. He's doing great. This district has done an excellent job of training people prepared to move on to become superintendents. And we have a number in the queue right now that if they're ready to go out and start looking, that should go on to be superintendents. But thanks, Anthony, for being in and joining us, sir.
Yeah, so I just want to say, man, great work, great things you were doing. Now we're going to get ready to wrap up here, man. We got about 10 minutes. Now I'm going to tell you what would have been a big story had COVID not hit. COVID hit right before a pretty big story in this community. And I saw some mobilizing around this story, and I was prepared to mobilize around this story and probably did so vocally on the computer. But you went out supporting our young people at Lincoln and all of our young people out there, making the playoffs again and again, out there competing at a level that the district hadn't competed in a long time. And right before the Black Lives Matter protests and the death of George Floyd and COVID, we had an incident right here that could have sparked the right kinds of conversation that were needed. We had a coach over in Independence who thought it was appropriate to lean into a conversation you were having with young people and your family that he was not even a party to, and thought he was going to check you and put you in your place in front of your daughter and people who were with you at that ball game. And had it not been for COVID, we probably would have mobilized on the independent school board meeting. Talk to us about that briefly, because I think COVID hit and that needs to be elevated. Talk about it.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate situation. And, we feel that as a district, we've kind of moved on for it. It'd be an opportunity for me to continue to have some conversations with the superintendent out there as we get through all of this. But it was unfortunate. The picture's always being painted that I was out here taunting students. And everybody who knows me, I do open gym on Saturdays. I open the gym up to community members. People know I haven't done any taunting. I don't taunt kids. I have 2 kids. All 3 of my kids are athletes. I actually coach my 8-year-old daughter at the Linwood Y. So I've been a coach 2 years doing that with these young girls. We teach them about great sportsmanship. As a superintendent, and I'm a former athlete. I played at the highest level. I led Division III in scoring in 1997. I didn't taunt people then. Even when I was lighting them up, I didn't taunt. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's not even in my character that I see a kid lose a heartbreaking game and I'm taunting. It was unfortunate that it turned into what it turned into. And then how it played out in the media, of course. It was very unfortunate, but people who know me and they know my reputation and they know what I'm about, I'm a very honest person. My board would tell you, I will come in and self-report. Hey, I'll be the first to tell you I messed up on this, but here's what I'm going to do to fix it. That's why the relationship works, because I've always operated with integrity. I don't believe in lying and falsifying my way to success, because all of that comes to surface. The truth always will come out. And so to your point, Dr. Carpenter, it was a very unfortunate situation that occurred in front of my 8-year-old daughter.
Yep. And, you know, it came at a time. And as we think about a lot of things that went on over the course of the last couple of years and even leading right up to the pandemic, this moment was, it was going to happen. The moment that we're in right now as a country, it had to happen. There's been so much buildup leading to this moment. So I want to thank you for being that leader that's needed in KCMO at this time as it relates to the moment. You can do this. You got this. You got a hell of a team. You still owe me for Kelly Rachel, by the way.
I know. I thought I already paid you back for that.
No, man. You still owe me for Kelly. I don't have a place for her right now unless she wants to do some work from home stuff. But no, you got a great one there. Thank you, Dr. Bedell, for what you do. Let's see if there are any questions before we get out of here tonight. Okay, let's see what we kind of have. I'm going to go through and make sure we didn't miss out on any questions. Question.
I saw something early on from Katina about paraprofessionals or support staff.
How support staff going to be retooled? Yeah, that was a question.
Yeah, so Katina, we are having that conversation with our team. And as we think about job descriptions, when we look at where we want to go as a school district, that's all part of our conversation around this whole redesign. What do we do now around relevancy? How do we make sure that we're able to utilize those individuals in a manner where they will be able to continue to support our students? And like I said, at this point, at least for this upcoming year, we're looking at this hybrid model. We're going to need the support staff big time, regardless, especially as you think about social distancing and those types of things, the supports we're going to need. And we may have to look at how we feed students differently than what we've had done in the past. They will be highly needed for this school district, but we are going to take a deeper look at job descriptions across the board as we think about the future of this school district and what that looks like in the interest of serving our kids differently.
Absolutely. So we also had something here that I thought we should elevate here. Look at here. We have to have the right people doing the right work to best serve our kids. We're doing that in KCPS. So when you see your staff, and I don't know if this is a staff member or a parent, but somebody giving a shout out to the work that you're doing, that tells you that some things are going right. We have one more question here we're going to take. We got a couple minutes. I'm excited to see you both on this panel. Have you considered partnering with offsite locations like the YMCA gyms and classrooms for social distance and virtual learning pods? Great question for you, Doc.
And it is a great question. I know we're in conversation right now with Boys and Girls Club around helping us with some of this stuff during the upcoming semester. What we're thinking about at this point is if it is a requirement that we only can have a certain amount of students in our classes, that is where partners like the YMCA, Link is another group that we're going to have conversations with, and the Boys and Girls Club that we can talk to about helping support us. So even if it's a situation where we might have to be on, a A day, B day type schedule, do we then utilize some of our partners to help us to make sure that we have that social distancing component in order? And I know with only about a month and maybe 2 weeks or so before school starts, a lot of this we have to move on, but this is the beauty of what we're in right now. I get to come back to our board probably on the 15th. I think that's our next meeting. And I have an opportunity, I don't know if it's the 15th, but at some point during this month, I have an opportunity to come back to them and say, okay, here's the scenarios that we're looking at, and here's what we want to do in terms of making sure that we have a contingency budget to pivot as needed. And we need X amount of money to make that happen. And my board is giving us the flexibility to come back to them on that, even though we've already approved our budget.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, if there's anything that I can do to help you guys, man, let me know, because you're doing some amazing work. One more final question before we get out of here. What steps are being taken? This is a big one, man. Rashard Lardy, you might be having to start a whole nother show, man. What steps are being taken to incorporate a more culturally relevant historically accurate curriculum to support Black students. What are you doing in the area, man? We know a lot of fallacies out there. Great question, Mr. Rashad.
Oh, well, I love that question. I had already spoke to our board about us working on through our equity and innovations division. We are looking at creating elective courses for our African-American students and our Hispanic students, our Latino students. There's, our district is probably close to 90% between the two subpopulations. And we do want to make sure that as we think about elective courses, how do we design a culturally relevant history course that will be able to properly educate our students on understanding why we are where we are right now. Because if you don't have an understanding of the foundation of what created what we now know as Kansas City, then it's going to be hard. You can get out and protest and do all of that, but if you're not properly educated, it's hard to know what is it that I really need to go after and start breaking down in order to break down some of these barriers. Wow. So the district is fully committed to that. I know with everything going on financially, and if Dr. Darrell Davis is on this line, this is what he majored in, right? He is a African American historian. This is what he majored in. So he is the perfect person to help us get this curriculum up and running. But I also have to make sure that he has the resources to do so. And then we want to also engage some of our community leaders that can help us as thought partners to make sure that we get it right in terms of what this curriculum needs to look like that will ultimately become a part of the fabric of our school district. So that conversation has been ongoing for us.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about the African-centered college prep curriculum out there, giving a shot side as it relates to the African history course frameworks that have been developed. Lots of good work going on in the district. First of all, let's just begin by letting our young people know that their history did not begin with slavery. Let's start telling our young people about Mansa Musa, the richest man in the history of the world.
That's right.
Put Elon Musk and Bill Gates and all of those guys to shame if he was around today. He would put them all to shame. He was walking across the continent of Africa. I'm going to give this lesson and we're out of here. He was giving away so much gold, the people with him had to stop him. His leadership, they had to say, King Mansa Musa, please stop giving away so much gold. You are literally changing the world's economy as you walk through here and visit with these people. That's how much gold he was giving away. That's who our kids come from. That's who we come from. Thank you, Dr. Bedell. You are that leader needed in this moment, man. Keep up the good work. This is Dennis Carpenter. I'm signing off on the Good Trouble Equity Talk. Doc, final comments.
I want to thank everybody who's joined, and I simply will ask that we have an opportunity to dismantle a system that by design has been getting the results that it's been getting. We have an opportunity to deconstruct and redesign what we ultimately want to see happen for the children in this city. And they deserve that. This community deserves that. And I would simply ask that as we begin to engage you all over the next couple of months, once school gets started, the first start is to say, if this traditional calendar model hasn't been working and you can look at data and data supports that it's not working, the first thing we have to do is say it's time for a change, and we need to be bold as a community to make that happen. And then I believe it will open up so many other opportunities for us to do our part to better serve this community. Because if we lift up the communities that are impacted the most by COVID-19, impacted the most by our inability to do economic development, to put the resources in those communities, education could take every single one of us to a place we never thought we could go. And I am a prime example of that when I think about where I come from. And so we need the community to just engage with us, believe that what we're doing comes from a good place, and also understand that we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, and but we learn from those mistakes. And I'm okay with making mistakes if it's in the best interest of what I believe is the right thing to do for these kids. Absolutely. So we need that support.
Stand bold, stand firm. Thank you, Kansas City community, for supporting Dr. Bedell. Thank you, board members, for supporting Dr. Bedell, whether it be Nate, Manny, Patty, and I know I'm missing some of y'all, man. Great people in the city. Great people. Peace, Dr. Bedell, man. You killed it tonight. Peace.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter. Take care, everybody.
Let's see. Yeah, hold on.